I'm police investigator
I need you to help me find that woman.
Henry Lando. I'd like to ask you a few questions about the incident.
What was your first day, my dear?
Not good.
The amount of people that have encountered the closer you
Woman increases.
come to where we are now.
Why did you bring us here? When are we gonna see some action?
You are here because your family belongs here.
That's a
I wouldn't want
fucking weird way to put it.
Oh, it feels so good.
you to come to me now, my angel. I want to get hurt even more.
Watch out!
If I were you.
What did she want from?
Cuckoo, 2024, is not just another horror film, it's a chilling psychological nightmare that slowly crawls under your skin and refuses to leave. Set in a quiet mountain resort, the movie hides dark secrets behind beautiful scenery, blending eerie sound design, disturbing mysteries, and shocking twists that will keep you guessing till the very end. In this video on Movies Explained Ms, we break down the full story, hidden meanings, and terrifying facts you probably missed. So get ready to uncover the real horror behind Cuckoo. Cuckoo is a 2024 science fiction horror movie written and directed by Tillman Singer. The film stars Hunter Schafer, Jan Bluthart, Martin Xekas, Jessica Hennick, and Dan Stevens. It is a joint project between Germany and the United States. The story follows a teenage girl who moves to the German Alps to live with her father, but soon begins to notice strange and scary events happening around her. As things become more disturbing, her father's boss slowly pulls the family into a dark and dangerous plan. The movie first premiered at the 74th Berlin International Film Festival on February 16, 2024. It was later released in theaters in the United States on August 9, 2024, and in Germany on August 29, 2024. Overall, the film received mostly positive feedback from critics and earned about $6.7 million at the box office. After her mother dies, a sad and broken teenager named Gretchen moves with her father Luis, stepmother Beth, and her mute half-sister Alma to a resort town in the Bavarian Alps. The family goes there to help build a new hotel on the land of an old mountain lodge owned by a strange man named Herr K.A. Pilkronig. To help Gretchen settle in, K.A. Pilkronig gives her a job at the hotel's front desk. Soon, disturbing events begin to happen. Gretchen sees several female guests suddenly throwing up, Alma starts having seizures caused by a strange echoing scream, and one night Gretchen is chased by a hooded woman while riding her bike. When she reports it, the police brush it off as a prank. Later, Gretchen meets a detective named Henry who is investigating a murder connected to the hooded woman. She also becomes close friends with a guest named Ed, and the two plan to run away together. But their escape fails when they hear the same painful shriek, nearly hit the hooded woman with their car, and crash. Gretchen is badly hurt and stuck at the resort while Ed is taken to the hospital. Henry tells Gretchen he believes the hooded woman has killed at least one person by making her choke on her own vomit, and that one of the sick women Gretchen saw may be involved. Together, they watch a nearby cottage, where the hooded woman attacks Gretchen's co-worker Trixie, trying to place a strange slimy substance inside her body. The next day, Gretchen angrily confronts her father and K.A. Pilkronig about what is happening at the resort. During the argument, K.A. Pilkronig accidentally shows a package sent to the family that contains items belonging to Gretchen's mother. Luis admits he sold their old home. Heartbroken and furious, Gretchen goes to her room and listens to voice messages on her mother's answering machine. One message is from Alma, using a computer voice, begging her mother to contact Gretchen to make her happy. When Gretchen comes out of her room, her family is gone. K.A. Pilkronig tells her Alma had another seizure and they took her to the hospital. He offers to drive Gretchen to the train station so she can escape, but first takes her to his house to give her money. There, K.A. reveals the truth. He says Henry is a former police officer who lost his job, and the hooded woman is not human but part of a near-human species, similar to cuckoo birds. These creatures place their young inside human bodies to grow. Their loud shrieks confuse humans and help their offspring develop. Alma is one of these implanted children, raised by humans until she is ready to return to her real kind. K.A. has been secretly protecting and studying these creatures at the resort. He explains that Louise and Beth unknowingly stayed the years ago during their honeymoon. K.A. locks Gretchen in a pool house and uses a flute to call a teenage creature. It tries to forcefully reproduce with Gretchen using slime, but Henry arrives in time, shoots K.A. and kills the creature. Henry and Gretchen rush to the hospital, where K.A. planned to reunite Alma with her real mother, the hooded woman. Gretchen realizes Henry plans to kill both the creature and Alma. To save her sister, Gretchen stabs Henry with her knife. She reaches Alma and scares the creature away by pretending she will hurt Alma. Alma panics and runs, and the creature chases Gretchen. Gretchen puts on headphones to block the scream and stabs the creature in the throat, killing her. Gretchen reunites with Alma and gains her trust again by thanking her for the message she left for their mother. They then find K.A. and Henry still alive, pointing guns at each other. As both men threaten the girls, Alma covers Gretchen's ears and releases a powerful shriek that disorients them. The sisters escape while Henry and K.A. shoot each other dead. Outside, they meet Ed, who has recovered and drives them away from the resort, helping them finally reach safety. The narrative of Cuckoo unfolds in the serene yet eerie setting of a Bavarian Alps resort, where the protagonist, Gretchen, played by Hunter Schafer, arrives with her fractured family. Reluctantly uprooted from her American life following her mother's death, Gretchen embodies the archetype of a grieving teenager thrust into an unfamiliar world. Her father, Luis Martin Xikas, has relocated the family including his new wife Beth, Jessica Hennick, and their mute daughter Alma, Mila to collaborate on a new hotel project with the enigmatic resort owner, K.A. Dan Stevens. From the outset, the film establishes a palpable tension through Gretchen's isolation. She communicates sporadically with her absent biological family via cassette tapes, a nod to analog nostalgia that contrasts with the modern horrors about to unfold. As Gretchen takes a menial job at the resort's front desk, subtle disturbances begin to erode the facade of tranquility. Female guests inexplicably vomit, a piercing shriek echoes through the valleys, triggering seizures in Alma, and Gretchen encounters a hooded woman whose pursuits escalate from shadowy glimpses to violent chases. This setup draws heavily on classic horror tropes, reminiscent of isolated resort thrillers like The Shining, but writer-director Tillman Singer infuses it with a unique blend of science fiction and body horror elements. The plot's progression hinges on Gretchen's growing paranoia, which is validated through a series of revelations. She befriends Ed, A. Strudberg A. Diaresis S. Frisbee, a guest who becomes her confidant and potential escape partner, adding a layer of queer undertones to the narrative that explores themes of connection amid chaos. Their attempted flight is derailed by the mysterious shriek, leading to a crash that injures Gretchen and propels her deeper into the mystery. Enter Henry, Jan Bluthart, a detective whose investigation into related murders intersects with Gretchen's experiences, unveiling connections to the vomiting incidents and the hooded woman's slime implanting attacks. These elements culminate in confrontations that expose the resort's dark underbelly, where K.A. experiments blur the lines between human and something otherworldly. Singer's screenplay masterfully builds suspense by withholding information, allowing the audience to piece together the puzzle alongside Gretchen. The plot twists, while occasionally veering into absurdity, maintain a feverish momentum. For instance, the revelation of a package from Gretchen's mother and a voicemail from Alma serve as emotional anchors, grounding the sci-fi horror in familial drama. The climax shifts into high gear with Gretchen's realization of Alma's true nature and the ensuing battles, where sound design plays a pivotal role. Headphones muffling shrieks become a clever survival tool. Ultimately, the story resolves with the sisters' escape, emphasizing themes of acceptance and protection over destruction, though not without casualties like K.A. Pilkronig and Henry's mutual demise. Delving deeper into the characters, Gretchen stands as the film's emotional core. Schaeffer's portrayal captures the raw vulnerability of adolescence compounded by grief. Her wide-eyed expressions convey disbelief turning to determination. Gretchen's arc from sullen outsider to fierce protector mirrors classic final girl trajectories, but with added depth through her queer identity and budding romance with Ed. This relationship, though understated, provides moments of tenderness amid the terror, highlighting Gretchen's search for belonging. In contrast, Herr K.A. Pilkronig, embodied by Dan Stevens with a chilling mix of charm and menace, represents the film's antagonistic force. Stevens, known for his versatility from Downton Abbey to Legion, adopts a thick German accent and eccentric mannerisms, often seen playing a wooden flute that lampoon mad scientist stereotypes while injecting genuine threat. His obsession with preserving a parasitic species draws from real cuckoo bird behaviors, where brood parasitism involves laying eggs in other birds' nests, a metaphor extended to human surrogacy in the film. Supporting roles enrich the ensemble. Martin Xekas as Luis portrays a father blinded by ambition, his neglect exacerbating Gretchen's alienation. Jessica Hennick-Speth adds complexity as a stepmother caught in the web of secrets, her English poise cracking under pressure. Mila Lu's Alma, mute and enigmatic, becomes a vessel for the horror, her seizures and eventual shriek symbolizing inherited trauma. Jan Bluthart's Henry evolves from ally to antagonist, his disgraced backstory adding moral ambiguity. Even minor characters like Trixie, Greta Fernatilde inverted exclamation markings, Gretchen's co-worker, and the hooded woman, Callan Morrow, contribute to the atmosphere, with the latter's design evoking primal fears through her hooded, screeching presence. Thematically, Cuckoo explores brood parasitism as a central metaphor for reproductive horror and family dynamics. The cuckoo species' method of implanting young into human hosts parallels real-world issues like forced surrogacy and bodily autonomy, particularly resonant in a post-Roe v. Wade era. Singer weaves in elements of grief, with Gretchen's loss of her mother manifesting in her protective instincts toward Alma, questioning nature versus nurture. The film delves into acceptance of one's place in a blended family, of supernatural elements intruding on reality, and of personal identity amid chaos. Horror and mystery blend seamlessly, as Singer notes, like vanilla and chocolate ice cream, creating a fever dream state that probes subconscious fears. Disorientation is a key theme, amplified by the shriek's time-looping effects, symbolizing how trauma distorts perception. The resort's idyllic facade critiques tourism and exploitation, with K.A. Pilkronig's experiments representing unchecked scientific hubris. Singer's directorial style elevates these themes through innovative techniques. Shooting on 35mm film in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, over 35 days in 2022, he captures the Alps' beauty in stark contrast to the horrors. Cinematographer Paul Foltz employs wide-angle lenses to distort spaces, enhancing the sense of uneasy hallways seem endless, forests claustrophobic. Sound design by Simon Wasco is masterful. The reverberating shriek not only disorients characters but immerses the audience, mimicking auditory hallucinations. Editing by Tyrrell Gibson and Philip Thomas maintains a relentless pace, intercutting serene landscapes with sudden violence. Influences from Giallo films are evident in the vibrant colors and stylized kills, while body horror nods to Cronenberg through slime implants and transformations. Performances anchor the film's eccentricity. Hunter Schafer, in her first leading role post-Euphoria, delivers a tour de force, blending vulnerability with greater. Her physicality in chase scenes is raw and convincing. Dan Stevens steals scenes with his unhinged charisma. Interviews reveal he drew from ornithologists and mad scientists, relishing the role's duality. Jessica Hennick and Martin Xerxes provide solid support, their chemistry as a couple underscoring familial tensions. Mila Lu's silent performance conveys volumes through expressions, making Alma's revelations impactful. The ensemble's commitment shines in multilingual dialogue, English, German, French, adding authenticity to the international setting. Production history reveals a tumultuous path. Announced in 2021 with Neon backing singer after his debuts, initial casting included John Malkovich and Gemma Chan, who departed due to scheduling. Stevens, Hennick, Xerxes, and Fern A. inverted exclamation marks joined in 2022, co-produced by Fiction Park and Waypoint Entertainment with a $7 million budget. The film faced delays, shifting from a May to August 2024 US release by Neon. Behind-the-scenes insights from interviews highlight singer's visionary approach. Schaefer praised his detailed knowledge, while producers noted the challenges of filming in remote locations. Costume designer Frauke Furl's choices, like Gretchen's jacket, carry symbolic weight, representing her outsider status. Special effects blend practical and digital, with the hooded woman's design evolving from conceptual sketches to terrifying reality. Reception has been polarized yet generally positive. On Rotten Tomatoes, it holds a 79% critic score and 58% audience score, with praise for its originality and Schaefer's performance. Critics like Adam Naiman lauded its atmospheric subordination of logic, while others critiqued its underdeveloped plot. Metacritic's 62/100 reflects mixed views, with some finding it too serious for its B-movie vibes. Box office grossed $6.7 million worldwide, modest but fitting for indie horror. Festival premieres at Berlinale and SXSW generated buzz, with wins at Brussels Fantastic Film Festival for international competition. Audience reactions on X vary, from praise for its uniqueness to confusion over the plot. Expanding on the plot's intricacies, the initial sequences set a deliberate pace, introducing the resort's oddities through Gretchen's perspective. The vomiting guests, dismissed as altitude sickness, foreshadowed the parasitic theme, where women's bodies become unwitting hosts. Singer's use of time loops during shriek attacks creates a disorienting narrative structure, forcing viewers to question reality much like Gretchen does. This technique echoes films like Inception but grounds it in horror, where the loops serve to implant or control rather than dream weave. The hooded woman's pursuits, often at night with Gretchen on her bike, build kinetic tension, her screams echoing like a siren's call reversed into terror. Character dynamics further illuminate the story. Gretchen's relationship with her father is strained by his remarriage, symbolizing displacement akin to the Cuckoo's Nest invasion. Beth's complicity in the secrets adds layers of betrayal, while Alma's muteness represents suppressed truths bursting forth in the finale. Henry's arc, from helper to hunter, critiques authority figures in horror, his obsession with eradicating the species contrasting K. A. Pilcronig's preservationist zeal. Ed's role, though brief, introduces hope and romance, her survival aiding the sisters' escape underscoring themes of chosen family over biological ties. Thematically, the film interrogates reproductive rights through horror lenses. The implantation scenes evoke violation, drawing parallels to alien abductions or forced pregnancies, with slime as a visceral symbol of intrusion. Grief permeates every frame. Gretchen's cassette recordings to her dead mother humanize her, making her heroism more poignant. Acceptance, as Singer articulates in interviews, is the core. Gretchen accepts Alma's hybrid nature, embracing the other rather than rejecting it. Nature versus nurture debates arise in K. A. Pilcronig's experiments, questioning what makes a family: blood, choice, or imposition. Singer's style is a tapestry of influences. Wide lenses distort faces during confrontations, amplifying unease, while the soundtrack's dissonant notes heighten paranoia. Filming on 35mm lends a grainy authenticity, evoking 70s horror aesthetics. Practical effects for the creaturesse teenage specimens and adult forms blend grotesque with elegance, their designs inspired by bird-human hybrids. Performances deserve extended praise. Schaefer's debut lead showcases range, from sarcastic teen banter to screams of defiance. She commands the screen. Stevens, in behind-the-scenes talks, discusses channeling horny ornithologists, his flute playing adding eccentricity. Hennick brings nuance to Beth. Her breakdown scenes raw. Suckers underplays Lewis's obliviousness, making his revelations shocking. Lou's eyes convey Alma's inner turmoil, a silent performance rivaling the vocal ones. Production anecdotes reveal dedication. Initial cast changes allowed for stronger chemistry. Schaefer gushed over her debut in interviews. Filming in Germany posed logistical challenges, but the Alps' isolation mirrored the story's themes. Budget constraints led to creative solutions, like using natural sounds for the shriek. Critically, reviews highlight strengths and flaws. Roger Ebert's site notes confusion in explanations but praises commitment. Variety discusses Singer's influences, from subconscious to wide lenses. Audience feedback on platforms like TikTok and X echoes this, with some loving the madness, others decrying plot holes. In analyzing the soundtrack, Simon Wasco's compositions blend orchestral swells with electronic distortions, the shriek motif recurring like a leitmotif. Trivia includes multilingual scripting for authenticity, and festival accolades affirm its boldness. The film's cultural resonance lies in its timely horror, bodily autonomy debates amid global shifts. Its queer elements, through Gretchen and Dead, add representation in genre cinema. Box office, while not blockbuster, indicates cult potential, similar to Neon's other hits. Extending the thematic exploration, Cuckoo critiques patriarchal control via K.A.Pilcronig's experiments, where men orchestrate women's reproduction. The resort as a microcosm of society hides horrors behind beauty, a commentary on facade-maintaining institutions. Grief's portrayal is nuanced. Gretchen's anger manifests in rebellion, her bass playing a sonic rebellion against the shriek. Directorial choices, like glitch effects, divide viewers but enhance surrealism. Cinematography's scope ratio, 2.35:1, captures vast landscapes, contrasting intimate horrors. Performances in ensemble scenes, like family dinners, reveal subtleties. Tensions simmer through glances. Cuckoo, 2024, a comprehensive analysis. Production development and pre-production. The genesis of Cuckoo can be traced back to August 2021 when it was announced that German filmmaker Tilman Singer would write and direct his second feature film for Neon, the acclaimed independent film studio. This collaboration marked a significant milestone for Singer, who had gained recognition with his 2018 film school thesis project Lewis, which was picked up for distribution and became a festival sensation. The announcement of Cuckoo represented Singer's transition from a promising newcomer to an established filmmaker working with one of the most respected names in independent cinema. The initial casting announcements revealed an ambitious ensemble featuring Hunter Schafer in the lead role, alongside John Malkovich, Gemma Chan, and Sophia Boutella. This early configuration suggested a high-profile production that would blend emerging talent with established performers. However, the project underwent significant changes during its pre-production phase. By July 2022, the casting had been substantially reconfigured when Dan Stevens, Jessica Hennick, Martin Xakers, and Greta Fernay joined the production. The departure of Malkovich and Chan was attributed to timing issues, a common occurrence in film production when scheduling conflicts arise. This reshuffling ultimately led to a cast that would prove instrumental in bringing Singer's vision to life. The production structure of Cuckoo embodied the increasingly common model of international co-production, specifically between Germany and the United States. The film was produced through a partnership between the Seldorf-based Fiction Park and the United States-based Waypoint Entertainment. This transatlantic collaboration allowed the filmmakers to access resources, talent, and funding from both countries, while also positioning the film for distribution in multiple markets. The producers included Marcus Halberschmidt, Josh Rosenbaum, Maria Tzigka, and Ken Cow, with Thor Bradwell also serving as a producer. The executive production team featured Tom Quinn, Jeff Deutschman, Jason Wald, Emily Thomas, and Ryan Frisser, with Emily Chung serving as co-producer. Singer approached the project with specific creative demands that were non-negotiable from his perspective. Despite being relatively early in his career, having only completed his film school thesis as his first feature, Singer insisted on bringing his trusted collaborators from Lewes to the production. This included his production designer, sound designer, cinematographer Paul Foltz, and composer Simon Wasco. Perhaps most significantly, Singer was adamant about shooting the film on analog film stock rather than digital, a decision that would have substantial implications for the film's visual aesthetic and production workflow. The insistence on shooting on film was met with resistance from the line producer, who attempted to dissuade Singer from this choice due to the additional costs and logistical complexities involved. However, Singer made it clear that this was one of his fundamental requirements for the project. In interviews, he explained that he was willing to compromise on the specific format, whether 35mm or 16mm, or a mixture of both, but that shooting on analog film was essential to his vision for the movie. Singer stated that he told the production team he could work with 35mm or mix formats, but that he needed to shoot analog. This commitment to film stock rather than digital capture demonstrated Singer's artistic priorities and his belief in the specific aesthetic qualities that celluloid could bring to the horror genre. Singer's approach to developing Cuckoo was deeply rooted in his personal creative process and his experience making Lewes. He explained in various interviews that he typically thinks about scenes in terms of shots, working closely with cinematographer Paul Foltz to develop a detailed shot list before production began. This pre-visualization process allowed Singer to have a clear mental image of the finished film before cameras rolled, though he remained open to improvisation on set when opportunities arose. This balance between careful planning and creative flexibility would prove crucial during the compressed shooting schedule. The thematic foundation of Cuckoo drew inspiration from the biological phenomenon of brood parasitism exhibited by cuckoo birds. Singer was fascinated by the cuckoo's behavior, particularly how the chick hatches faster than the host species' eggs and instinctually pushes the legitimate offspring out of the nest. The newborn cuckoo then manipulates its adoptive parents through its insistent calls, often growing much larger than the birds caring for it. This natural horror served as the conceptual springboard for Singer's exploration of themes related to family structure, generational conflict, acceptance, and the cycles of violence that perpetuate across generations. Singer's vision for Cuckoo was to create what he described as a fever dream-like exploration of acceptance and the challenge of coming to terms with one's circumstances. The film would examine family dynamics from multiple perspectives, including the tension between biological and chosen families, the violence people inflict on each other across generations, and how individuals find ways to cope with horrific circumstances while still protecting and caring for one another. These thematic concerns would be woven into a genre framework that blended science fiction, horror, mystery, and elements of the creature feature. The development process also involved crafting a screenplay that would deliberately withhold information from the audience while maintaining their engagement. Singer was interested in creating a mystery that would take time to unravel, trusting that viewers who stuck with the film would ultimately receive explanations for the strange occurrences depicted on screen. This approach required careful calibration to ensure the narrative remained compelling even as it resisted providing immediate answers to the questions it raised. Neon's involvement as both financier and distributor provided Singer with creative support, while also ensuring the film would have a clear path to theatrical release. The relationship between Singer and Neon proved proved collaborative, with the filmmaker noting that he would sometimes consult with studio executives when struggling with particular lines or story beats. Singer recalled instances where Neon executives would write lines that worked perfectly, demonstrating a productive creative partnership rather than a purely business relationship. This level of creative collaboration helped Singer develop a script that balanced his artistic vision with narrative accessibility. The choice of location was crucial to the film's conception. Setting the story in a resort in the German Alps, specifically the Bavarian region, provided both practical and aesthetic advantages. The isolated mountain setting created an inherent sense of claustrophobia and disconnection from the outside world, essential elements for the type of psychological horror Singer wanted to explore. The alpine environment also offered striking visual contrasts, a beautiful, pristine landscapes hiding sinister secrets that would become central to the film's visual strategy. Pre-production also involved extensive work on the creature design for the hooded woman and the explanation of the cuckoo species' biology and behavior. Singer made the deliberate choice to reveal the creature relatively early in the film rather than saving it for the climax, as is traditional in many horror films. This decision stemmed from his belief that the presence and closeness of this ghostly maternal figure was more important to the story than maintaining mystery about her appearance. Given that the protagonist Gretchen had recently lost her mother, the haunting presence of this maternal creature carried thematic weight beyond simple scares. Filming principal photography for Cuckoo commenced in May 2022 and wrapped in July 2022, encompassing a total span of 35 days of shooting. This relatively compressed schedule required precise planning and efficient execution, particularly given Singer's decision to shoot on film rather than digital, which allowed for fewer takes and required more careful preparation for each shot. The production took place entirely in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, rather than in the Bavarian Alps where the story is set. This location substitution is common in film production, allowing filmmakers to access better production infrastructure while still achieving the desired visual aesthetic. Specific filming locations included the cities of Wuppertal, Krefeld, and Pilkronchenladbach in North Rhine-Westphalia, as well as locations in Hessen. These areas provided the necessary mountain exteriors, forested areas, and architectural settings required for the story. The resort locations were carefully scouted to find facilities that could convincingly portray the isolated alpine lodge central to the narrative. Singer had mentioned in interviews his preference for shooting in abandoned or underutilized locations, finding that such spaces brought an authentic atmosphere of desolation and unease to the production. The choice to shoot on 35mm film stock represented a significant technical and aesthetic decision that affected every aspect of production. Singer specifically used Kodak film stocks, including 500T for low light and interior scenes and 250D for daylight exteriors. The use of celluloid rather than digital sensors gave the film a particular texture and color rendition that Singer believed was essential for achieving the right tone. Film stock has different characteristics in how it captures highlights and shadows, handles color, and renders grain compared to digital capture, all of which contributed to the film's visual identity. Cinematographer Paul Foltz, who had worked with Singer on Lewis, employed wide-angle anamorphic cinemascope lenses to create an immersive visual experience. Singer explained in multiple interviews his preference for wide-angle lenses, particularly in the context of cinemascope and anamorphic formats. He noted that while telephoto lenses had become popular in contemporary filmmaking, they create a sense of distance and removal from the action. In contrast, wide-angle lenses, especially when viewed on a large screen, create an enveloping effect where the image seems to wrap around the viewer, pulling them into the world of the film. This immersive quality was particularly important for a horror film where Singer wanted the audience to feel trapped in the same space as the characters. The visual strategy for Cuckoo involved creating what might seem like a paradox, using bright, chromatic colors and beautiful natural settings to enhance rather than diminish the sense of horror. Foltz's lighting design produced a vivid, almost hyperreal palette that contrasted sharply with the dark events unfolding in the story. This approach drew inspiration from horror films of the 1980s and 1990s that weren't afraid to show their monsters in full light and used saturated colors to create unsettling juxtapositions. The picturesque alpine scenery, the modernist architecture of the resort, and the lush forest environments all became sights of terror rather than beauty, demonstrating Singer's interest in subverting audience expectations about what horror should look like. The filming process required Singer and his team to adapt to the specific demands of shooting on location in Germany during the late spring and summer months. The weather in mountainous regions can be unpredictable, requiring flexibility in the shooting schedule to accommodate changing light conditions. However, the decision to shoot on film meant that the cinematographer and camera team had to be more deliberate about exposure and lighting, as they couldn't immediately review footage on high-resolution monitors the way digital productions can. This enforced discipline, combined with Singer's detailed shot lists, helped keep production moving efficiently despite the compressed schedule. The 35-day shooting schedule meant that the production averaged roughly 3 minutes of screen time per day of filming, a relatively brisk pace that required all departments to work in close coordination. Singer's method of thinking in shots and having a predetermined visual plan proved essential for maintaining this pace. Scenes were carefully choreographed and rehearsed before filming, allowing the cast and crew to execute complex sequences efficiently. This preparation was particularly important for the film's action sequences and scenes involving the hooded woman creature, which required precise timing and coordination between performers, special effects, and camera movements. The practical effects work for the creature's sequences was handled on set during principal photography, with the hooded woman portrayed by performer Callan Morrow. The decision to use a practical creature rather than relying primarily on CGI contributed to the film's tactile quality and allowed the actors to respond to a real physical presence rather than imagining something that would be added in post-production. This approach is consistent with Singer's overall aesthetic philosophy of using analog and practical techniques whenever possible to ground the film's fantastic elements in physical reality. Hunter Schafer's performance as Gretchen required her to be present in nearly every scene of the film, a demanding schedule that tested her stamina and emotional range. As her first leading role in a feature film, the production gave Schafer the opportunity to demonstrate her abilities beyond her acclaimed work in the HBO series Euphoria. The physical demands of the role included scenes of running through forests, fighting with the creature, and enduring various injuries and hardships that accumulate throughout the narrative. Schafer also had to convey her character's emotional journey from grief-stricken teenager to determined protector, requiring subtle modulation of her performance across the film's runtime. Dan Stevens' portrayal of Herr K. Tilda Pilkronig involved creating a character who is simultaneously threatening and oddly charming, sinister and occasionally comedic. Stevens, who speaks German fluently, was able to bring authenticity to his character's German dialogue while also finding the specific cadences and pronunciations that would make K. Tilda Pilkronig feel distinctive and slightly off-putting. The character's meticulous pronunciation of Gretchen's name with an insistently Teutonic emphasis became one of the film's memorable details, demonstrating how small performance choices can create outsized effects. The production design by Dario Menzacosta played a crucial role in establishing the film's atmosphere. The resort needed to feel both inviting and unsettling, a place that initially appears to be an idyllic vacation destination but gradually reveals its sinister purpose. The medical facility within the resort complex required particular attention, as it needed to suggest advanced scientific research while also feeling slightly wrong in ways that aren't immediately apparent. The design team created environments that appeared normal on the surface but contained subtle indications of the strange activities taking place. The costume design by Frauke Ferl contributed to character development and the film's overall aesthetic. Gretchen's wardrobe needed to reflect her status as an American teenager displaced into an unfamiliar European environment, element, while also being practical for the physical demands of the role. The butterfly knife that becomes Gretchen's signature weapon was integrated into her costume and character from early in the film, establishing it as both a symbol of her agency and a practical tool for survival. The hooded woman's costume required careful design to be both distinctive and somewhat ambiguous, creating a figure that could be read as human, supernatural, or something in between. Sound recording during production was overseen by Singer's trusted sound designer from Lewes, who worked to capture clean dialogue and atmospheric sounds that would be essential for the film's sound design in post-production. The shrieking sound of the cuckoo creatures was a particular focus, as this sonic element would be central to multiple scenes and needed to be both unsettling and distinctive. While some of these sounds would be enhanced or created entirely in post-production, establishing the sonic palette during filming helped guide the sound design process. The production also involved filming scenes with Mila Lewis Alma, Gretchen's mute half-sister. Working with a young performer who portrays a character who communicates through sign language rather than spoken dialogue presented specific challenges and required careful direction to ensure that Alma's emotional states and intentions remained clear to the audience. The relationship between Gretchen and Alma forms the emotional core of the film, and establishing the chemistry between Schaefer and Lou during production was essential. Singer's experience making Lewes, despite being a much smaller production, provided valuable preparation for handling the increased scale and complexity of Cuckoo. He noted in interviews that while Lewes helped him develop his approach to filmmaking and his visual style, Cuckoo represented a significant step up in terms of duration, stamina, and stress. The longer shooting schedule and larger crew required Singer to develop new skills in managing a more complex production while maintaining his artistic vision. However, the core approach of thinking in shots, working closely with his cinematographer, and having a clear vision of the finished film remained consistent across both projects. The collaborative atmosphere on set, fostered by Singer's willingness to listen to ideas while maintaining clear creative direction, helped the production navigate the challenges of the compressed schedule. Cast and crew members have spoken about the positive working environment, with Singer's enthusiasm for the material and his clear communication of his vision helping to align everyone's efforts toward a common goal. This collaborative spirit extended to problem solving when unexpected challenges arose, as they inevitably do during any film production. Post-production following the completion of principal photography in July 2022, Cuckoo entered an extensive post-production phase that would last until early 2024, when the film premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival. This extended period reflects the complexity of the post-production work required for a film that combines practical effects, subtle visual effects, intricate sound design, and a carefully orchestrated musical score. The editorial process was overseen by editors Daryl Gibson and Philip Thomas, who faced the challenge of assembling Singer's meticulously planned shots into a coherent narrative that maintained tension while gradually revealing information to the audience. The film's structure, which deliberately withholds full explanations until well into the runtime, required careful pacing to ensure that viewers remained engaged even as mysteries accumulated. The editors needed to balance multiple narrative threads: Gretchen's grief over her mother's death, her adjustment to her new family situation, the increasingly strange events at the resort, and the gradual revelation of K.A. Pilkronig's experiments while maintaining momentum and building toward the climactic confrontations. One of the key challenges in post-production was calibrating the film's tone. Cuckoo blends horror, science fiction, mystery, action, and occasional moments of dark humor, requiring the editors to find the right rhythm for each sequence. Scenes needed to work both as individual set pieces and as parts of a larger whole, with tonal shifts that feel organic rather than jarring. The editing process involved fine-tuning the balance between exposition and mystery, ensuring that the audience received enough information to follow the story while preserving the sense of discovery and revelation that makes the viewing experience rewarding. The visual effects work, while not overwhelming, played an important role in enhancing certain sequences. The time loop effects that occur when characters hear the cuckoo's shriek required particular attention, as these moments needed to be disorienting without becoming confusing. The glitch-like visual distortions that accompany these temporal disruptions were created to suggest a kind of biological interference with human perception and memory, blending science fiction concepts with horror aesthetics. These effects needed to be integrated seamlessly with the footage shot on 35mm film, requiring careful color matching and texture work to ensure they felt like organic parts of the image rather than obvious digital additions. Color grading was a crucial aspect of post-production, particularly given Singer's desire to create a bright, vivid aesthetic that subverted traditional horror film palettes. The colorist worked with the footage shot on Kodak film stock to enhance the natural saturation and contrast while maintaining a consistent look across different lighting conditions and locations. The goal was to preserve the specific qualities of the film stock, its grain structure, color rendition, and tonal range, while also pushing the images toward the heightened, slightly hyper-real look Singer envisioned. The bright, chromatic color scheme served to make the horror elements more unsettling by presenting them in clear, vivid detail rather than obscuring them in shadows and darkness. Sound design and mixing represented another major component of post-production. Singer had brought his sound designer from Alius to work on Cuckoo, ensuring continuity in approach and maintaining his collaborative relationships. The soundscape needed to support the film's atmosphere while also incorporating distinctive sonic elements like the cuckoo's shriek, which serves as both a narrative device and a sonic signature for the film. The sound design team created layers of environmental ambience, the sounds of the alpine setting, the resort's interior spaces, the forest at night that ground the film in physical reality while also leaving room for the intrusion of uncanny and disturbing sounds. The shrieking sound of the cuckoo creatures required extensive development to create something that would be both viscerally disturbing and distinctive. The sound needed to suggest something not quite human but also not simply animal, creating an unsettling hybrid quality that reflects the creature's nature as near-human species. The time loop sequences required precise sound editing to create the sensation of reality glitching and repeating, with dialogue and environmental sounds stuttering and overlapping in ways that mirror the visual distortions. These sonic effects needed to be loud and impactful without becoming painful or driving audiences from the theater, requiring careful calibration of frequencies and amplitude. The integration of music into the sound mix was overseen collaboratively by the sound team and composer Simon Wasco, ensuring that the score and sound design worked together rather than competing for the audience's attention. In some sequences, the line between sound design and music becomes deliberately blurred, with Wasco's compositions incorporating noise elements and distorted tones that blend with the sound effects. This integration creates a unified sonic experience where music, effects, and ambience form a cohesive whole. The post-production process also involved creating the film's various delivery formats. While shot on 35mm film, the movie would need to be released in digital cinema formats, DCP, as well as prepared for eventual home video release in 4K, Blu-ray, and streaming formats. This required creating high-quality digital scans of the film elements, then using these scans as the basis for all subsequent formatting and distribution. The goal was to preserve as much of the film's original analog quality as possible even when viewing it through digital projection or on home screens. Test screenings during post-production allowed Singer and his team to gauge audience reactions and make final adjustments to pacing, clarity, and impact. These screenings likely revealed which elements of the narrative worked as intended and which might need clarification or adjustment. The balance between mystery and comprehension is particularly delicate in a film like Cuckoo, and feedback from test audiences would have informed final editorial decisions about how much information to provide and when to provide it. The creation of the theatrical trailers and marketing materials also occurred during post-production, requiring the editing team to prepare materials that would intrigue potential viewers without revealing too much of the film's surprises. The first teaser trailer was released in February 2024, timed to coincide with the film's Berlin International Film Festival premiere, while a full trailer followed in April 2024. These marketing materials needed to convey the film's distinctive tone and visual style while preserving key narrative revelations. By February 2024, the film had been completed and locked, ready for its world premiere. The post-production phase, lasting approximately 18 months from the end of principal photography, demonstrates the care and attention devoted to crafting the final film. This extended timeline allowed Singer and his collaborators to refine every aspect of the production, ensuring that the finished film aligned with his original vision while also being an engaging and effective piece of cinema. Music. The musical score for Cuckoo was composed by Simon Wasco, who had previously collaborated with Tillman Singer on his debut feature Use. This ongoing creative partnership ensured a continuity of artistic vision and mutual understanding between director and composer, allowing Wasco to develop a score that integrated seamlessly with Singer's overall aesthetic approach. Wasco's return to work with Singer on his sophomore feature demonstrates the value of maintaining creative relationships across projects, particularly in independent cinema where trust and shared artistic sensibilities can elevate the final product. Wasco's approach to scoring Cuckoo involved creating music that functions almost as a character within the film, with the ability to shift dramatically from intimate and delicate to overwhelmingly loud and aggressive as required by the narrative. This dynamic range reflects the film's own tonal shifts between moments of quiet unease and explosive horror. The score needed to support scenes of psychological tension, action sequences, emotional character moments, and the revelation of the film's science fiction elements, requiring Wasco to work across multiple musical registers and styles. The musical aesthetic draws significantly from 1980s synthesizer-based horror scoring, particularly the work of composers like John Carpenter and the Italian progressive rock bands that scored many giallo films. This stylistic choice aligns with Singer's visual approach of looking back to horror films from that era while creating something distinctively contemporary. Wasco's use of analog synthesizers and electronic textures creates a sonic palette that feels both retro and modern, avoiding pastiche while clearly acknowledging its influences. The score was developed in close collaboration with Singer during both pre-production and post-production. Wasco would have had access to the script and Singer's detailed vision for the film before shooting began, allowing him to start developing musical themes and ideas early in the process. During post-production, Wasco would have worked with the edited footage to compose and refine his score, ensuring that the music hit the right emotional beats and supported the narrative rhythm established by the editing. One of the distinctive features of the Cuckoo score is its willingness to move between different musical approaches within a single film. Some cues are built around driving, pulsing rhythms that create urgency and tension, while others employ more ambient, atmospheric textures that enhance the sense of unease without drawing attention to themselves. The score also incorporates moments of melody and emotional warmth, particularly in scenes involving the relationship between Gretchen and Alma, providing contrast to the more aggressive and dissonant material that accompanies the horror elements. The relationship between Wasco's score and the film's sound design is particularly noteworthy. Both elements work in tandem to create the film's sonic identity, with moments where musical elements and sound effects blend together until the distinction becomes unclear. This integration was likely facilitated by Singer's sound designer also being a returning collaborator from Lewis, ensuring that all elements of the sonic landscape were being developed with awareness of how they would interact. A significant addition to the score was the original song Gretchen's Song, which features vocals by Hunter Schafer herself. The decision to have the lead actress perform a song for the film adds another layer of personal investment to the production while also creating a unique musical moment within the score. The song was written by Tillman Singer and Simon Wasco, with additional musicians contributing to the recording. The song features guitars played by Nils Herzog and Tillman Singer, bass by Simon Wasco, and drums by Sebastian von der Heide. The track was recorded and mixed by Philip Jansen at Dumbo Studios in Cologne and mastered by J.A. Pilgro R.G. Berger at Compact Studio in Cologne. Gretchen's song serves multiple functions within the film and its marketing. As a piece of music, it provides a moment of emotional expression for the protagonist, potentially offering insight into her psychological state. As a marketing tool, the song was released on streaming platforms in advance of the film's theatrical release, helping to build awareness and interest. The decision to release it separately from the main score album also speaks to its role as both a standalone piece and an integral part of the film. The official soundtrack album was released on August 30, 2024, through Film Tracks Limited, featuring 22 tracks with a total runtime of 43 minutes. The relatively short duration reflects the focused nature of Wasco's score, avoiding padding or redundancy in favor of essential musical material. The soundtrack was made available through major streaming platforms including Apple Music and Spotify, allowing fans to experience the music outside the context of the film. A physical release of the soundtrack was produced in partnership between Mutant and Neon, released on December 13, 2024. This limited edition vinyl release was pressed on 140-gram vinyl and housed in a gatefold sleeve with a no-B strip. The physical release was marketed to collectors and fans of film music, with Mutant offering various exclusive color variants including a blue glitter vinyl edition. The package design and presentation reflected the aesthetic of the film while creating a distinct identity for the soundtrack as a collectible object. In addition to Wasco's original score, Cuckoo's soundtrack incorporates several pre-existing pieces of music that contribute to the film's period setting and atmosphere. The film features String Quartet No. 1 in F major, Opus 18-1, 2, Adagio affettuoso ed appassionato by Ludwig van Beethoven, performed by the Vlach Quartet. This classical piece provides an interesting counterpoint to the electronic score, suggesting the cultural sophistication of the Alpine resort setting while also creating ironic distance from the horror unfolding. The use of Beethoven in a horror context has a long tradition, and this particular selection with its passionate emotional character creates specific associations and moods. Several library music tracks composed by Gerard Treed and published by Sonnet in Music in Munich were incorporated into the film, including Denise and Medium Slow. These pieces likely appear as source music within the resort environment, contributing to the ambient soundscape while also serving narrative functions. The Italian pop song Il mio prossimo amore performed by Loretta Goi, written by Totte Tilde Squared Savio and Amerigo Casella, adds a European flavor consistent with the film's German setting. This track, originally released in 1981 by Warner Music Italia, brings a specific period sensibility to the soundtrack. The film also includes Money, Guns and Coffee performed by Pray for Rain, with music and lyrics by Dan Wool. This track likely serves a different function than the classical and library music, potentially appearing during a transitional sequence or providing ironic commentary on the action. The careful selection and placement of these pre-existing pieces demonstrates attention to how music functions within the film's world, distinguishing between score that exists purely for the audience and source music that characters might actually hear. The score's approach to the film's climactic sequences represents some of Wasco's most intense and aggressive work. As the narrative accelerates toward its conclusion, the music grows increasingly loud and direct, matching the visceral action on screen while maintaining the electronic aesthetic established throughout. These sequences test the limits of what audiences might find comfortable, pushing volume and intensity in ways that create genuine discomfort or a deliberate choice that enhances the horror experience. The marketing materials emphasized the score's dynamic range and intensity, with promotional text noting that it transitions from the intimate and delicate to neck-snappingly loud and direct as needed, and describing it as a truly masterful score that deserves to be played as loud as possible. This emphasis on volume and impact positions the score not just as background accompaniment but as an essential element of the visceral experience Cuckoo aims to create. The recommendation to play the score loudly acknowledges that part of its effect comes from physical impact. The way loud, low-frequency sounds can create bodily sensations beyond simple auditory perception. Wasco's work on Cuckoo demonstrates how a film composer working in the horror genre can draw on established traditions while creating something distinctive and personal. The score functions as both homage to the synthesizer scores of 1980s horror cinema and as a contemporary work that uses those tools and approaches in service of a unique vision. By maintaining the collaboration with Singer across two features, Wasco has been able to develop a shared musical language that enhances Singer's filmmaking approach, creating scores that feel integral to the films rather than simply applied after the fact. Release theatrical. The theatrical release strategy for Cuckoo reflected both its status as an independent art house horror film and Neon's growing reputation as a distributor capable of bringing distinctive genre films to wide audiences. The release campaign began with the film's world premiere, followed by a festival run, before opening in commercial theaters in multiple territories across several months. Cuckoo had its world premiere at the 74th Berlin International Film Festival on February 16, 2024, screening in the Berlinale Special Gala section. This prestigious platform provided the film with significant visibility and critical attention, positioning it as a serious work of cinema rather than simply a commercial horror product. The Berlin premiere allowed Singer to present his film in his home country before it reached other markets, and the festival setting created opportunities for critical assessment and industry buzz that would benefit the subsequent commercial release. Following the Berlin premiere, Cuckoo screened at South by Southwest on March 14, 2024, one of North America's most influential film festivals, particularly for genre cinema. The SXSW screening introduced the film to American audiences, critics, and industry professionals, building momentum toward its planned commercial release. The festival is known for its enthusiastic audiences and its role in launching successful horror films, making it an ideal venue for generating word-of-mouth and critical discussion. The film continued its festival run with a screening at the Overlook Film Festival on April 4, 2024. The Overlook Festival, dedicated specifically to horror cinema, provided a concentrated audience of genre enthusiasts likely to appreciate Singer's distinctive approach. On June 19, 2024, Cuckoo opened at London's Raindance Film Festival as part of the festival's special focus on German cinema. This screening highlighted the film's status as a significant German production and allowed it to reach British audiences in a festival context before its UK theatrical release. The festival run concluded with a screening at the 28th Fantasia International Film Festival in Montreal on July 30, 2024. Fantasia, one of North America's largest and most prestigious genre film festivals, provided another opportunity to build audience enthusiasm and critical appreciation before the wide commercial release. The extensive festival presence allowed Cuckoo to accumulate reviews, generate discussion on social media and within film communities, and build anticipation for its theatrical run. The film was originally scheduled for theatrical release in the United States on May 3, 2024, but Neon made the decision to push the release date back to August 9, 2024. This delay, announced between the film's festival premiere and its intended commercial opening, likely reflected strategic considerations about the competitive landscape, marketing timing, or the desire to build additional awareness through the extended festival run. The August release date positioned Cuckoo in the late summer period, traditionally a quieter time for prestige releases but increasingly recognized as viable for horror films that can capitalize on audiences seeking alternatives to mainstream tentpole releases. The US theatrical release on August 9, 2024, saw Cuckoo opening in 1,503 theaters nationwide, a fairly wide release for an independent film. This platform reflected Neon's confidence in the film's commercial potential and their willingness to invest in a substantial theatrical push. The release strategy positioned Cuckoo as a viable option for mainstream audiences rather than limiting it to art house venues, though the theater count was considerably smaller than major studio releases that might open on 3,000 or more screens. Cuckoo opened alongside two other significant releases: the video game adaptation Borderlands starring Cate Blanchett and Kevin Hart, and the romantic drama It Ends With Us based on Colleen Hoover's novel. This competitive environment presented both challenges and opportunities. While Borderlands offered spectacle-oriented science fiction action and It Ends With Us targeted the romance audience, Cuckoo provided an alternative for viewers seeking distinctive horror cinema. The film's unique tone and critical reception helped it carve out a specific audience despite the competition. The opening day performance saw Cuckoo earning $1.4 million, including $435,000 from Thursday night preview screenings. Preview screenings have become an increasingly important part of theatrical releases, allowing eager fans to see films before the official opening day and generating early box office revenue. The Friday through Sunday opening weekend resulted in a gross of $3,030,437, placing the film at number 9 on the domestic box office charts. While this performance was modest compared to major releases, it represented a solid opening for an independent horror film with a $7 million production budget. The United Kingdom release followed on August 23, 2024, through Universal Pictures, demonstrating the international distribution arrangements that had been put in place for the film. Having Universal handle UK distribution provided access to that company's established theatrical infrastructure while allowing Neon to focus on the US market. Germany, where the film was partially produced and where director Singer is based, received its theatrical release on August 29, 2024, through Weltkino Filmverleih. The later release in Germany, despite the film being a German co-production, reflects the reality that the primary market for English-language independent films remains the United States and United Kingdom. The theatrical release was supported by a marketing campaign that emphasized the film's distinctive visual style, Hunter Schafer's lead performance, and Dan Stevens' eccentric villain. A 30-second teaser trailer was released on February 8, 2024, just before the Berlin premiere, offering audiences a glimpse of the film's aesthetic and tone. The full trailer premiered in early April 2024, first showing exclusively in theaters before screenings of Neon's other horror film Immaculate, which also starred a Euphoria alumna, Sydney Sweeney. This strategic placement allowed Neon to cross-promote their genre offerings to audiences already interested in horror cinema. The trailer for Cuckoo faced the challenge of intriguing viewers without revealing too much about the film's mysteries and surprises. The marketing materials emphasized the atmospheric horror, the isolated alpine setting, and the performances while leaving the specifics of the plot and the nature of the cuckoo creatures ambiguous. This approach aimed to attract both horror fans interested in creature features and viewers drawn to psychological thrillers and mystery narratives. Critical reception of the theatrical release generally positioned Cuckoo as an interesting, visually distinctive entry in the horror genre that prioritized atmosphere and style over conventional scares. Reviews emphasized Singer's assured direction, the striking cinematography, and the committed performances from Schafer and Stevens. However, some critics found the narrative logic confusing or felt the film didn't fully deliver on its premise, reflecting the polarizing nature of Singer's approach to mystery and revelation. The theatrical run demonstrated the challenges facing independent films in the current theatrical environment. After a respectable opening weekend, Cuckoo experienced a steep 71% drop in its second weekend, earning $873,296 from 1,450 theaters. This significant decline reflects typical patterns for films driven more by curiosity and critical interest than by sustained audience enthusiasm or strong word of mouth. By the third weekend, the film had lost 1,152 of its theaters, dropping to just 351 locations and earning $165,747. Despite the rapid decline, Cuckoo's theatrical performance must be evaluated in context. For an independent horror film with a distinctive artistic vision and a modest budget, the film achieved its primary goals, reaching audiences, generating critical discussion, and establishing Singer as a filmmaker of growing importance. The theatrical release also served to build awareness for the film's eventual home video and streaming release, creating a foundation for the film's long-term life across multiple platforms. The theatrical campaign for Cuckoo also benefited from Hunter Schafer's promotional efforts, including interviews where she discussed her transition from television to film and her interest in the horror genre. These promotional appearances helped position the film to fans of Euphoria who might be curious to see Schafer in a different type of role, while also reaching horror fans through genre-focused media outlets and podcasts. The international theatrical release extended beyond the US, UK, and Germany to include limited releases in markets such as Mexico, New Zealand, Russia, CIS territories, and other territories. However, the international performance was modest, with worldwide box office beyond the domestic US market contributing relatively little to the overall gross. This pattern is common for independent American films, particularly in the horror genre, where cultural specificity and marketing challenges can limit international appeal. Home media. The home media release strategy for Cuckoo followed contemporary patterns for independent films, with a digital release preceding physical media and providing viewers with multiple options for accessing the film after its theatrical run. Neon and Decal Releasing coordinated the home entertainment rollout, ensuring broad availability across platforms while maintaining the film's profile in the marketplace. The digital release was announced for September 17, 2024, approximately 5 weeks after the film's theatrical opening. This relatively quick turnaround from theatrical to digital reflects current industry practice, where the theatrical window has contracted significantly compared to previous decades. The digital release made Cuckoo available for both purchase and rental across major platforms including Apple TV, Google Play Movies, Amazon Video, YouTube, Fandango at Home, formerly Vudu, and Spectrum On Demand. The widespread digital availability ensured that viewers who had missed the theatrical run or lived in areas where the film hadn't played could access it through their preferred platform. The announcement of the digital release emphasized that audiences could experience Cuckoo in the discomfort of their own home, a tongue-in-cheek acknowledgement that horror films can be particularly intense when watched in domestic settings without the social buffer of a theater audience. The marketing for the home release continued to highlight Hunter Schafer's terrific final girl performance and Dan Stevens' exhilarating portrayal of the villain, recognizing that these performances had been significant draws for the theatrical release. Physical media releases on Blu-ray and DVD were scheduled for October 22, 2024, approximately 5 weeks after the digital release. This staggered approach reflects the declining importance of physical media in the home entertainment market while still serving collectors and viewers who prefer to own permanent copies of films. The Blu-ray release was particularly important for a film that had been shot on 35mm and carefully color graded in post-production, as the format could provide higher quality presentation than standard DVD or compressed digital streaming. The physical media releases were enhanced with supplemental materials designed to provide added value and insight into the production. The Blu-ray and DVD editions included deleted scenes, offering viewers glimpses of material that didn't make the final cut and providing context for creative decisions made during editing. Behind-the-scenes footage gave audiences a look at the production process, showing how specific sequences were filmed and offering insights into Singer's directorial approach. On-set interviews with key creative personnel were included as significant bonus features. Hunter Schafer discussed her experience as the lead actress and her approach to the role of Gretchen. Costume designer Frauke Ferl explained her design choices and how costumes contributed to character development and the film's overall aesthetic. Production designer Dario Menzacosta detailed his work creating the resort environment and the various locations featured in the film. These interviews provided valuable context for understanding the creative decisions behind the film while offering fans deeper engagement with the production. The physical media packaging likely featured artwork consistent with the theatrical marketing campaign, maintaining visual continuity across the film's various releases. For collectors, particularly those interested in contemporary horror cinema or independent film, the physical media releases represented an opportunity to own a permanent copy of the film along with the supplemental materials. The home media release extended Cuckoo's availability beyond its limited theatrical run, allowing the film to find audiences who might not have had access to it in theaters. For a film that received generally positive critical reception but had limited commercial performance, the home media release represented an important second life, potentially building a cult following over time. Many horror films that underperformed theatrically have found dedicated audiences through home video, and Cuckoo's distinctive style and performances positioned it well for this kind of gradual discovery. The timing of the home media release is also aligned with the Halloween season approach, with the October Blu-ray and DVD release occurring just before the holiday when horror film viewing traditionally peaks. This strategic timing potentially boosted sales and rentals as viewers sought new horror content to watch during the season. The availability of Cuckoo on streaming subscription services came later, with the film eventually appearing on Disney Plus and Hulu, both owned by the same corporate parent. This streaming availability further expanded the potential audience, allowing subscribers to watch the film without additional rental or purchase fees. For Neon, the streaming deals represented an additional revenue stream while also serving to build awareness of their brand and catalog of distinctive films. The various home media formats served different audience segments and viewing contexts. The digital release prioritized convenience and immediate access, allowing viewers to watch the film on devices ranging from smartphones to large-screen televisions. The physical media releases targeted collectors and enthusiasts who value ownership, supplemental materials, and optimal presentation quality. The eventual streaming availability served casual viewers and those who discovered the film through recommendations or browsing. The comprehensive home media strategy ensured that Cuckoo remained available and discoverable long after its theatrical run concluded. For independent films, this extended availability across platforms is crucial for building audience and maintaining cultural presence. Films that might have brief theatrical runs can find substantial audiences through patient discovery on streaming platforms and recommendations within online communities. Reception. Box office. Cuckoo's box office performance reflected both the opportunities and challenges facing independent horror films in the contemporary theatrical marketplace. With a reported production budget of $7 million, the film needed to generate sufficient revenue to recoup its costs and demonstrate commercial viability, while also managing expectations appropriate for an art house genre film with limited mainstream appeal. The domestic opening weekend gross of $3,030,437 from 1,503 theaters represented a per-theater average of approximately $2,016, a modest figure that indicated decent but not exceptional audience interest. For context, major studio releases typically aim for per-theater averages in the $5,000 to $10,000 range or higher during opening weekends, while independent films often settle for lower averages compensated by longer theatrical runs and strong word of mouth. The opening day performance provided early indications of the film's theatrical trajectory. The $1.4 million earned on Friday, August 9th, including $435,000 from Thursday night previews, suggested a front-loaded release where the most enthusiastic viewers turned out immediately. The Thursday preview number, representing approximately 31% of the Friday total, indicated that a significant portion of the opening audience consisted of eager fans and horror enthusiasts rather than casual viewers drawn by general awareness or mainstream marketing. The opening weekend placed Cuckoo at number 9 on the domestic box office charts, a respectable position but far from the top. The film was competing against It Ends With Us, which became the weekend's surprise hit with a strong romantic drama audience, and faced competition from the continuing run of Deadpool Wolverine, which was in its 5th weekend but still earning significantly more than newer releases. The science fiction action film Borderlands, released alongside Cuckoo, also outperformed the horror film despite receiving poor reviews, demonstrating the advantages of higher budgets, star power, and broader marketing reach. Neon had experienced significant success earlier in 2024 with the horror film Longlegs starring Nicolas Cage and Maika Monroe, which had opened to $22 million in July and became one of the year's major horror hits. This success created both opportunities and challenges for Cuckoo. On one hand, Longlegs demonstrated that Neon could effectively market and distribute horror films to substantial audiences, potentially benefiting Cuckoo through association with the brand. On the other hand, the stark difference in performance, $3 million versus $22 million opening weekends, highlighted that not all horror films, even from the same distributor, achieve the same commercial results. Longlegs benefited from Nicolas Cage's star power, an aggressive viral marketing campaign, and positioning as more of a mainstream psychological thriller, whereas Cuckoo was more explicitly arthouse in its approach and lacked comparable mainstream appeal. Interestingly, during Cuckoo's opening weekend, Longlegs was still in theaters in its 5th week, earning approximately $2 million and placing 10th on the box office charts. The fact that Neon had 2 films in the top 10 demonstrated the distributor's successful year in horror cinema, even as it highlighted the different trajectories of more and less commercial genre offerings. The second weekend performance revealed the extent of Cuckoo's commercial challenges. With a gross of $873,296 from 1,450 theaters, the film experienced a precipitous 71% decline from its opening weekend. This steep drop is typical of films that generate initial curiosity but fail to maintain momentum through word of mouth or repeat viewing. The per-theater average dropped to approximately $602, indicating that most theaters were seeing very limited attendance. By the third weekend, the theatrical release had essentially collapsed, with the film earning just $165,747 from only 351 theaters, having lost 1,152 locations. The loss of theaters reflects exhibitor decisions based on performance. When a film isn't generating sufficient revenue, theaters quickly replace it with other options. The final domestic box office total reached $6,217,733, falling short of the film's $7 million production budget. This underperformance must be understood in context. However, the production budget represents only part of a film's total costs. Marketing and distribution expenses can equal or exceed production costs, particularly for wide releases. However, the domestic theatrical gross represents only one revenue stream. The film would generate additional revenue through international theatrical release, home video sales and rentals, streaming platform licensing, and television rights over time. The international box office performance was even more limited than the domestic release. The film earned only $341,430 from limited international markets including the United Kingdom, Germany, Mexico, New Zealand, and Russia, CIS territories. This brought the worldwide theatrical total to $6,559,163. still below the production budget and well short of what would be needed to cover total costs through theatrical revenue alone. The international underperformance reflects several factors. Independent American horror films often struggle overseas, particularly in markets with strong local film industries and where cultural references or narrative approaches may not translate effectively. The film's dialogue-heavy script, reliance on English language interplay, and specific cultural references to American family dynamics may have limited its appeal in non-English speaking markets. Additionally, Neon's international distribution network, while growing, is less extensive than major studio operations, potentially limiting the film's ability to secure optimal release patterns and marketing support in overseas territories. The breakdown of revenue sources showed that domestic earnings comprised approximately 95% of the worldwide theatrical gross, with international markets contributing only 5%. This extreme skew toward the domestic market is unusual and suggests that the international release was either very limited in scope or poorly supported by distributors in key territories. For comparison, major studio releases typically see international revenue equal to or exceed domestic revenue, while even independent films usually achieve closer to a 60-40 or 70-30 domestic international split. The box office multiplier, the ratio of total domestic gross to opening weekend gross, reached approximately 2.05. This multiplier indicates how much a film's total domestic earnings exceed its opening weekend, with higher multipliers suggesting strong word of mouth and sustained audience interest. A multiplier around 2.0 is relatively low, confirming that Cuckoo's audience was concentrated in the opening week with limited expansion beyond initial interest. Films that build through word of mouth might achieve multipliers of 3.0, 4.0, or higher, playing in theaters for months and finding new audiences over time. Cuckoo's trajectory was instead front-loaded, with most of its audience arriving immediately and subsequent weeks seeing sharp declines. From a purely commercial perspective, Cuckoo did not meet the financial expectations that might have been hoped for given its budget and Neon's successful track record with horror films in 2024. However, commercial performance represents only one measure of a film's success, particularly for an independent art house production. The film succeeded in securing wide theatrical distribution, reaching audiences across the country, and generating substantial critical discussion. For a director's second feature, these accomplishments provide a foundation for future projects and establish Singer as a filmmaker with a distinctive voice worth supporting. The modest box office also reflects broader challenges in the theatrical marketplace for independent films. The concentration of audiences around major franchises and event releases, the competition from streaming platforms offering unlimited content for subscription fees, and the difficulty of breaking through crowded media environments all make theatrical success more challenging for films without major studio marketing budgets or built-in audience recognition. Critical response. The critical reception of Cuckoo was generally positive, with reviewers praising the film's distinctive visual style, committed performances, and ambitious approach to horror cinema, while also noting reservations about narrative coherence and tonal consistency. The film attracted attention from both mainstream film critics and specialized horror media, generating substantial written and video coverage that helped establish its cultural presence. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film achieved a 78% positive rating from 176 critic reviews, with an average rating of 6.6 out of 10. This certified fresh score indicates a generally favorable critical consensus, suggesting that approximately 3/4 of professional critics recommended the film while 1/4 had reservations or negative responses. The Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus reads, "Directed with inventive flair by Tillman Singer while given flavorful personality by stars Hunter Schafer and Dan Stevens, Cuckoo is a madcap madhouse horror that's on the right side of deranged." This pithy summary captures the critical mainstream's view of the film as an energetic, somewhat chaotic work that succeeds through style and performance. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average of critic scores, assigned the film a score of 62 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. The Metacritic score, being somewhat lower than the Rotten Tomatoes percentage, suggests that while most critics viewed the film positively, their enthusiasm was moderate rather than overwhelming. A score in the low 60s indicates a film that critics generally liked but had reservations about, finding it interesting and worthwhile without considering it exceptional. Audience responses, as measured by Cinema Score and post-track polling, were notably less enthusiastic than critical reception. Cinema Score, which surveys opening night audiences and assigns letter grades, gave Cuckoo a C+ average. This is a relatively poor grade in the Cinema Score system, where the average film receives a B+ or A and grades below B are quite rare. The C+ suggests that many viewers, particularly those who saw the film during its opening weekend, left theaters feeling disappointed or confused. Horror films often receive lower cinema scores than other genres because the genre attracts viewers with varying tolerance for unconventional narratives and disturbing content, but C+ remains notably low. Post-track polling provided a 68% positive score from audiences, another indicator of mixed viewer response. The gap between critical and audience reception is significant. Critics at 78% positive versus audiences at 68% positive, with the Cinema Score suggesting even more dissatisfaction among opening weekend viewers. This divide often emerges for films that critics appreciate for artistic ambition, distinctive style, or thematic complexity, while general audiences find them confusing, unsatisfying, or not what they expected from marketing materials. Hunter Schafer's performance received widespread praise from critics, who noted her ability to carry the film while navigating demanding physical and emotional requirements. B.J. Colangelo of Slash Film wrote enthusiastically about Schafer's work, stating that she delivered a strong-willed, straight-shooting, absolutely sensational performance that served as the anchor in this chaotic storm, noting that Schafer commands every scene. This appreciation for Schafer's work appeared consistently across reviews, with many critics identifying her performance as one of the film's strongest elements. For Schafer, who was primarily known for her role in the television series Euphoria, these reviews established her credibility as a film actress capable of leading a feature. Dan Stevens received equally strong notices for his performance as Herr K. A. Pilkronig, with critics praising his commitment to the eccentric, over-the-top characterization. Robert Daniels at RogerEbert.com observed that every choice Stevens makes as Mr. K. A. Pilkronig doubles as a lampoon and a threat, as equally hilarious and sadistic, capturing the delicate balance Stevens achieved between comedy and menace. Stevens' fluent German and his precise, slightly stilted delivery of Gretchen's name became specific details that critics highlighted as examples of his thoughtful characterization. However, not all responses to the performances were unqualified praise. Adam Solomons of IndieWire, while calling Schafer's performance impressive, gave the film a C grade and argued that the biggest crime of Cuckoo is that it won't lean into being a B-movie, something it might have been good at. The performances, so especially Stevens' are silly and sincere, and their on-set interviews with key creative personnel were included as significant bonus features. Hunter Schafer discussed her experience as the lead actress and her action competent enough for Cuckoo to have worked as pure pulp. But this film takes itself too seriously and pokes fun at its own silliness, a fatal combination. This critique represents a recurring theme in less favorable reviews, that the film couldn't decide whether it wanted to be serious art house horror or campy genre entertainment, and suffered from attempting both simultaneously. Jessica Kiang of Variety described the film as an energetically outlandish fusion of stylish atmospherics, old-school reproductive horror and pro-flick knife advertorial, a description that captures both the film's genre-blending approach and its somewhat tongue-in-cheek tone. Variety's review, published following the Berlin premiere, was among the first major critical assessments and helped establish the terms in which the film would be discussed as a stylish, deliberately excessive work that prioritized atmosphere over logical narrative progression. The Hollywood Reporter's David Rooney concluded his review by noting, It's ultimately too silly to be truly chilling, but with neon behind it, cuckoo might just be cuckoo enough to draw some cult attention. This prediction that the film might find a cult audience rather than mainstream success proved prescient, as the theatrical performance and critical reception suggested a film more likely to be discovered and appreciated over time by devoted fans than to achieve immediate widespread popularity. German critic Dieter Oswald wrote that Tillman Singer pours out his fantasy cornucopia of horrific sequences with obvious pleasure and elegant nonchalance, emphasizing the director's confident control of genre elements and his evident enjoyment in crafting elaborate set pieces. The German critical reception was important for Singer as a German filmmaker, and local reviews tended to emphasize pride in a national filmmaker making international impact in genre cinema. Critics frequently discussed the film's visual style, praising cinematographer Paul Foltz's work and Singer's use of wide-angle anamorphic lenses to create an immersive, enveloping image. The decision to shoot on 35mm film was noted by multiple reviewers as contributing to the film's distinctive texture and color palette. The bright, saturated visual approach, contrary to typical horror film aesthetics that favor darkness and muted colors, received particular attention as an interesting creative choice that sometimes succeeded in creating unease through beauty rather than ugliness. The narrative structure and logic received more mixed responses. Several critics noted that the film deliberately withholds information and explanation, requiring patience from viewers as mysteries accumulate. Those who appreciated this approach praised Singer's confidence in trusting the audience and creating an atmosphere of sustained uncertainty. Critics less impressed by this strategy felt the film was withholding information arbitrarily rather than building genuine mystery, and that when explanations finally arrived, they didn't adequately justify the preceding ambiguity or clarify confusing earlier sequences. The scientific explanation for the cuckoo creatures and their life cycle drew varied responses. Some reviewers found the biological horror concept clever and appreciated its thematic resonance with the film's exploration of family relationships and identity. Others felt the explanation was either too complicated to follow or too silly to take seriously, or that it raised more logical questions than it answered. The time loop effect created by the cuckoo's shriek, while visually distinctive, was identified by some critics as a narrative device that complicated rather than enhanced the story. The film's tonal shifts between horror, humor, and emotional drama were frequently discussed. Critics who responded positively to the film often praised these tonal variations as keeping the viewing experience unpredictable and engaging. Those who responded more critically felt the shifts were jarring or indicated uncertainty about what kind of film Cuckoo wanted to be. The presence of genuinely comedic moments, particularly in Dan Stevens' performance, sat uncomfortably for some viewers and critics who expected more consistent horror intensity. Sound design and Simon Wasco's score received nearly universal praise, with critics noting the effective use of the shrieking sound effect and the propulsive electronic music. The sonic elements were identified as crucial to the film's atmosphere and its ability to create tension even when the narrative became confusing. The willingness to push volume and sonic intensity to uncomfortable levels was appreciated by critics as demonstrating Singer's commitment to creating a visceral experience. The film's themes regarding family, identity, motherhood, and cycles of violence were recognized by more analytically inclined critics, though opinions varied on how successfully these themes were integrated into the genre framework. Some reviewers felt the thematic material added depth and substance to what could have been simple creature feature thrills, while others felt the themes were underdeveloped or overwhelmed by the elaborate plotting and horror set pieces. Comparisons to other films appeared frequently in reviews. Singer's debut was referenced by nearly every critic discussing Cuckoo, with most noting that the second feature demonstrated growth in scope and ambition while maintaining the distinctive style established in the first film. Comparisons to other horror films varied widely, with critics invoking everything from David Cronenberg's body horror to giallo films to contemporary art horror like A Cure for Wellness. These varied reference points suggest both the film's refusal to fit neatly into established categories and critics' efforts to provide context for readers unfamiliar with Singer's work. The critical reception, while generally positive, revealed significant divisions about what constitutes successful horror cinema and how much narrative coherence should be sacrificed for atmosphere and style. For critics who value auteurist vision, distinctive aesthetics, and willingness to prioritize mood over logic, Cuckoo succeeded admirably. For those who prefer horror films with tight plotting, consistent tone, and clear cause and effect relationships, the film was frustrating despite its evident craft and interesting ideas. The divergence between critical and audience response suggests that Cuckoo is precisely the type of film that benefits from critical framing and contextualization. Viewers who approached the film with awareness of Singer's artistic approach and the film's genre-bending intentions were more likely to appreciate what it was attempting, while those expecting conventional horror thrills or clear narrative resolution were more likely to leave disappointed. The role of Hunter Schafer's existing fan base from Euphoria in the film's reception deserves consideration. Her presence undoubtedly attracted viewers who might not otherwise have sought out an independent German-American horror film, but these viewers may not have been ideally positioned to appreciate Singer's unconventional approach. The marketing emphasized Schafer's involvement, potentially creating expectations that the film would be more mainstream and accessible than it ultimately proved to be. This tension between arthouse ambitions and the commercial necessity of attracting a broader audience through star power represents a common challenge for independent films. The mixed audience response, as reflected in the C+ cinema score and rapid box office decline, indicates that word of mouth was not particularly strong. When viewers emerge from theaters feeling confused or disappointed, they're less likely to recommend the film to friends and family, limiting the organic growth that can turn modest openings into sustained runs. The polarizing nature of Cuckoo, some viewers finding it brilliant and distinctive, others finding it frustrating and incoherent, created a situation where recommendations came with significant caveats, further limiting mainstream appeal. Social media response to the film was similarly divided, with horror film enthusiasts on platforms like Letterboxd and Film Twitter engaging in detailed discussions about the film's meanings, techniques, and effectiveness, while more casual viewers expressed confusion or dissatisfaction. The film became something of a litmus test within horror fan communities, with reactions revealing different priorities and tolerances for ambiguity, stylistic excess, and narrative unconventionality. Professional critics writing for specialty horror publications tended to be more enthusiastic than mainstream reviewers, reflecting the genre community's greater tolerance for unconventional approaches and appreciation for distinctive artistic voices. Publications focused on horror cinema contextualized Cuckoo within broader trends in contemporary genre filmmaking, noting connections to the growing prominence of international horror voices and the increasing willingness of horror films to blend arthouse aesthetics with genre thrills. The recognition of Tilman Singer as an emerging auteur within horror cinema was one of the most consistent themes across critical reception. Even critics who had reservations about Cuckoo acknowledged Singer's distinctive visual style, confident direction, and clear artistic vision. The film established him as a director worth watching, someone who brings a specific sensibility to genre material rather than simply executing familiar formulas. This reputation will likely benefit Singer's future projects, as both distributors and audiences will approach his work with awareness of his particular strengths and interests. The comparisons between Cuckoo and Neon's other 2024 horror release, Long Legs, became a recurring topic in critical discussion. While both films featured breakout performances from actresses known for television work, Maika Monroe and Hunter Schafer respectively, and embraced unconventional approaches to horror storytelling, they represented different points on the spectrum between art house experimentation and commercial accessibility. Long Legs, despite its own peculiarities, maintained clearer genre boundaries and offered more conventional thriller satisfactions, contributing to its significantly better commercial performance. Cuckoo's more extreme commitment to ambiguity and stylistic excess yielded a more polarizing but arguably more distinctive work. International critical reception varied by market, with German critics expressing particular pride in Singer's growing international profile while also noting the film's status as an international co-production rather than purely German work. British critics, writing for outlets like IndieWire and Screen Daily, tended to position the film within traditions of European art cinema, making use of genre frameworks, comparing it to films by directors like Nicholas Winding Refn or Yorgos Lanthimos, who similarly blend genre elements with auteurist visions. The critical discourse around Cuckoo also engaged with its thematic content, particularly its treatment of reproductive autonomy, maternal relationships, and bodily autonomy. Several critics noted the film's engagement with reproductive horror traditions while bringing contemporary perspectives to these themes. The exploration of chosen versus biological family, and the question of what makes someone a real mother or daughter, resonated with contemporary discussions about family structures and identity. However, the integration of these themes into the science fiction premise sometimes struck critics as muddled or incomplete, suggesting interesting ideas that the film didn't fully develop. The film's release during August 2024, a period dominated by high-profile releases and franchise fare, meant that critical attention was divided across many films. Cuckoo had to compete for review space and cultural conversation with bigger releases, which may have limited its ability to become a major topic of discussion. However, the horror film community's appetite for distinctive genre work ensured that the film received sustained critical attention from specialized outlets and critics who focus on horror cinema. Looking at the critical reception holistically, Cuckoo succeeded in its apparent goal of creating something distinctive and memorable within the horror genre. The 78% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes indicates that most professional critics found value in the film despite its flaws and unconventional choices. The reservations expressed even in positive reviews about narrative coherence, tonal consistency, and accessibility suggest that Singer's vision was executed effectively enough to engage critics while also pushing boundaries in ways that could alienate some viewers. The legacy of Cuckoo's critical reception will likely be defined by its positioning as an important step in Singer's development as a filmmaker and as an example of the kind of ambitious, distinctive horror filmmaking that companies like Neon support. Even critics who didn't fully embrace the film acknowledged its value in contributing to the diversity of voices and approaches within horror cinema. In an environment where many horror films recycle familiar formulas or approach to the role of Gretchen, costume designer Frauke Ferl explained her design choices and how costumes contributed to character development and the film's overall aesthetic. Production designer Dario Menzacosta detailed his work creating the resort environment and the various locations featured in the film. These interviews provided valuable context for understanding the creative decisions behind the film while offering fans deeper engagement with the production. The physical media packaging likely featured artwork consistent with the theatrical marketing campaign, maintaining visual continuity across the film's various releases. For collectors, particularly those interested in contemporary horror cinema or independent film, the physical media releases represented an opportunity to own a permanent copy of the film along with the supplemental materials. The home media release extended Cuckoo's availability beyond its limited theatrical run, allowing the film to find audiences who might not have had access to it in theaters. For a film that received generally positive critical reception but had limited commercial performance, the home media release represented an important second life, potentially building a cult following over time. Many horror films that underperformed theatrically have found dedicated audiences through home video, and Cuckoo's distinctive style and performances positioned it well for this kind of gradual discovery. The timing of the home media release is also aligned with the Halloween season approach, with the October Blu-ray and DVD release occurring just before the holiday when horror film viewing traditionally peaks. This strategic timing potentially boosted sales and rentals as viewers sought new horror content to watch during the season. The availability of Cuckoo on streaming subscription services came later, with the film eventually appearing on Disney Plus and Hulu, both owned by the same corporate parent. This streaming availability further expanded the potential audience, allowing subscribers to watch the film without additional rental or purchase fees. For Neon, the streaming deals represented an additional revenue stream while also serving to build awareness of their brand and catalog of distinctive films. The various home media formats served different audience segments and viewing contexts. The digital release prioritized convenience and immediate access, allowing viewers to watch the film on devices ranging from smartphones to large-screen televisions. The physical media releases targeted collectors and enthusiasts who value ownership, supplemental materials, and optimal presentation quality. The eventual streaming availability served casual viewers and those who discovered the film through recommendations or browsing. The comprehensive home media strategy ensured that Cuckoo remained available and discoverable long after its theatrical run concluded. For independent films, this extended availability across platforms is crucial for building audience and maintaining cultural presence. Films that might have brief theatrical runs can find substantial audiences through patient discovery on streaming platforms and recommendations within online communities. Reception. Box office. Cuckoo's box office performance reflected both the opportunities and challenges facing independent horror films in the contemporary theatrical marketplace. With a reported production budget of $7 million, the film needed to generate sufficient revenue to recoup its costs and demonstrate commercial viability, while also managing expectations appropriate for an art house genre film with limited mainstream appeal. The domestic opening weekend gross of $3,030,437 from 1,503 theaters represented a per-theater average of approximately $2,016. A modest figure that indicated decent but not exceptional audience interest. For context, major studio releases typically aim for per-theater averages in the $5,000 to $10,000 range or higher during opening weekends, while independent films often settle for lower averages compensated by longer theatrical runs and strong word of mouth. The opening day performance provided early indications of the film's theatrical trajectory. The $1.4 million earned on Friday, August 9th, including $435,000 from Thursday night previews, suggested a front-loaded release where the most enthusiastic viewers turned out immediately. The Thursday preview number, representing approximately 31% of the Friday total, indicated that a significant portion of the opening audience consisted of eager fans and horror enthusiasts rather than casual viewers drawn by general awareness or mainstream marketing. The opening weekend placed Cuckoo at number 9 on the domestic box office charts, a respectable position but far from the top. The film was competing against It Ends With Us, which became the weekend's surprise hit with a strong romantic drama audience, and faced competition from the continuing run of Deadpool Wolverine, which was in its 5th weekend but still earning significantly more than newer releases. The science fiction action film Borderlands, released alongside Cuckoo, also outperformed the horror film despite receiving poor reviews, demonstrating the advantages of higher budgets, star power, and broader marketing reach. Neon had experienced significant success earlier in 2024 with the horror film Longlegs starring Nicolas Cage and Maika Monroe, which had opened to $22 million in July and became one of the year's major horror hits. This success created both opportunities and challenges for Cuckoo. On one hand, Longlegs demonstrated that Neon could effectively market and distribute horror films to substantial audiences, potentially benefiting Cuckoo through association with the brand. On the other hand, the stark difference in performance, $3 million versus $22 million opening weekends, highlighted that not all horror films, even from the same distributor, achieve the same commercial results. Longlegs benefited from Nicolas Cage's star power, an aggressive viral marketing campaign, and positioning as more of a mainstream psychological thriller, whereas Cuckoo was more explicitly arthouse in its approach and lacked comparable mainstream appeal. Interestingly, during Cuckoo's opening weekend, Longlegs was still in theaters in its fifth week, earning approximately $2 million and placing 10th on the box office charts. The fact that Neon had two films in the top 10 demonstrated the distributor's successful year in horror cinema, even as it highlighted the different trajectories of more and less commercial genre offerings. The second weekend performance revealed the extent of Cuckoo's commercial challenges. With a gross of $873,296 from 1,450 theaters, the film experienced a precipitous 71% decline from its opening weekend. This steep drop is typical of films that generate initial curiosity but fail to maintain momentum through word of mouth or repeat viewing. The per theater average dropped to approximately $602, indicating that most theaters were seeing very limited attendance. By the third weekend, the theatrical release had essentially collapsed, with the film earning just $165,747 from only 351 theaters, having lost 1,152 locations. The loss of theaters reflects exhibitor decisions based on performance. When a film isn't generating sufficient revenue, theaters quickly replace it with other options. The final domestic box office total reached $6,217,733, falling short of the film's $7 million production budget. This underperformance must be understood in context. However, the production budget represents only part of a film's total costs. Marketing and distribution expenses can equal or exceed production costs, particularly for wide releases. However, the domestic theatrical gross represents only one revenue stream. The film would generate additional revenue through international theatrical release, home video sales and rentals, streaming platform licensing, and television rights over time. The international box office performance was even more limited than the domestic release. The film earned only $341,430 from limited international markets including the United Kingdom, Germany, Mexico, New Zealand, and Russia, CIS territories. This brought the worldwide theatrical total to $6,559,163. Still below the production budget and well short of what would be needed to cover total costs through theatrical revenue alone. The international underperformance reflects several factors. Independent American horror films often struggle overseas, particularly in markets with strong local film industries and where cultural references or narrative approaches may not translate effectively. The film's dialogue-heavy script, reliance on English-language interplay, and specific cultural references to American family dynamics may have limited its appeal in non-English-speaking markets. Additionally, Neon's international distribution network, while growing, is less extensive than major studio operations, potentially limiting the film's ability to secure optimal release patterns and marketing support in overseas territories. The breakdown of revenue sources showed that domestic earnings comprised approximately 95% of the worldwide theatrical gross, with international markets contributing only 5%. This extreme skew toward the domestic market is unusual and suggests that the international release was either very limited in scope or poorly supported by distributors in key territories. For comparison, major studio releases typically see international revenue equal to or exceed domestic revenue, while even independent films usually achieve closer to a 60-40 or 70-30 domestic international split. The box office multiplier, the ratio of total domestic gross to opening weekend gross, reached approximately 2.05. This multiplier indicates how much a film's total domestic earnings exceed its opening weekend, with higher multipliers suggesting strong word of mouth and sustained audience interest. A multiplier around 2.0 is relatively low, confirming that Cuckoo's audience was concentrated in the opening week with limited expansion beyond initial interest. Films that build through word of mouth might achieve multipliers of 3.0, 4.0, or higher, playing in theaters for months and finding new audiences over time. Cuckoo's trajectory was instead front-loaded, with most of its audience arriving immediately and subsequent weeks seeing sharp declines. From a purely commercial perspective, Cuckoo did not meet the financial expectations that might have been hoped for given its budget and Neon's successful track record with horror films in 2024. However, commercial performance represents only one measure of a film's success, particularly for an independent art house production. The film succeeded in securing wide theatrical distribution, reaching audiences across the country, and generating substantial critical discussion. For a director's second feature, these accomplishments provide a foundation for future projects and establish Singer as a filmmaker with a distinctive voice worth supporting. The modest box office also reflects broader challenges in the theatrical marketplace for independent films. The concentration of audiences around major franchises and event releases, the competition from streaming platforms offering unlimited content for subscription fees, and the difficulty of breaking through crowded media environments all make theatrical success more challenging for films without major studio marketing budgets or built-in audience recognition. Critical response. The critical reception of Cuckoo was generally positive, with reviewers praising the film's distinctive visual style, committed performances, and ambitious approach to horror cinema, while also noting reservations about narrative coherence and tonal consistency. The film attracted attention from both mainstream film critics and specialized horror media, generating substantial written and video coverage that helped establish its cultural presence. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film achieved a 78% positive rating from 176 critic reviews, with an average rating of 6.6 out of 10. This certified fresh score indicates a generally favorable critical consensus, suggesting that approximately 3/4 of professional critics recommended the film while 1/4 had reservations or negative responses. The Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus reads, "Directed with inventive flair by Tillman Singer while given flavorful personality by stars Hunter Schafer and Dan Stevens, Cuckoo is a madcap madhouse horror that's on the right side of deranged." This pithy summary captures the critical mainstream's view of the film as an energetic, somewhat chaotic work that succeeds through style and performance. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average of critic scores, assigned the film a score of 62 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. The Metacritic score, being somewhat lower than the Rotten Tomatoes percentage, suggests that while most critics viewed the film positively, their enthusiasm was moderate rather than overwhelming. A score in the low 60s indicates a film that critics generally liked but had reservations about, finding it interesting and worthwhile without considering it exceptional. Audience responses, as measured by Cinema Score and post-track polling, were notably less enthusiastic than critical reception. Cinema Score, which surveys opening night audiences and assigns letter grades, gave Cuckoo a C+ average. This is a relatively poor grade in the Cinema Score system, where the average film receives a B+ or A and grades below B are quite rare. The C+ suggests that many viewers, particularly those who saw the film during its opening weekend, left theaters feeling disappointed or confused. Horror films often receive lower cinema scores than other genres because the genre attracts viewers with varying tolerance for unconventional narratives and disturbing content, but C+ remains notably low. Post-track polling provided a 68% positive score from audiences, another indicator of mixed viewer response. The gap between critical and audience reception is significant to critics at 78% positive versus audiences at 68% positive, with the Cinema Score suggesting even more dissatisfaction among opening weekend viewers. This divide often emerges for films that critics appreciate for artistic ambition, distinctive style, or thematic complexity, while general audiences find them confusing, unsatisfying, or not what they expected from marketing materials. Hunter Schafer's performance received widespread praise from critics, who noted her ability to carry the film while navigating demanding physical and emotional requirements. B.J. Colangelo of Slash Film wrote enthusiastically about Schafer's work, stating that she delivered a strong-willed, straight-shooting, absolutely sensational performance that served as the anchor in this chaotic storm, noting that Schafer commands every scene. This appreciation for Schafer's work appeared consistently across reviews, with many critics identifying her performance as one of the film's strongest elements. For Schafer, who was primarily known for her role in the television series Euphoria, these reviews established her credibility as a film actress capable of leading a feature. Dan Stevens received equally strong notices for his performance as Herr K.A. Pilkronig, with critics praising his commitment to the eccentric, over-the-top characterization. Robert Daniels at RogerEbert.com observed that every choice Stevens makes as Mr. K.A. Pilkronig doubles as a lampoon and a threat, as equally hilarious and sadistic, capturing the delicate balance Stevens achieved between comedy and menace. Stevens' fluent German and his precise, slightly stilted delivery of Gretchen's name became specific details that critics highlighted as examples of his thoughtful characterization. However, not all responses to the performances were unqualified praise. Adam Solomons of IndieWire, while calling Schafer's performance impressive, gave the film a C grade and argued that the biggest crime of Cuckoo is that it won't lean into being a B-movie, something it might have been good at. The performances, especially Stevens', are silly and sincere, and they're